For years, it seemed like the world was on a pretty clear path. Build some serious guardrails for artificial intelligence. And then, almost overnight, the race completely changed. I mean, we're not talking about a small tweak here. We're talking about a massive global pivot, a fundamental shift from caution to competition that's totally redefining the future of tech. To get how we got here, we first have to understand the chaos that made regulation seem so urgent in the first place.
Okay, so to get this whole pivot, let's start with two songs. On the left, you've got the Beatles. Their track, Now and Then, used AI to clean up and restore John Lennon's voice. The band was fully on board, it was all above board, and it went on to win a Grammy. Pretty cool. On the right, though, a track that used AI to clone the voices of Drake and The Weeknd without anyone's permission. It blew up, went viral, and then got banned. This clash, sanctioned art versus synthetic theft, it just perfectly captures the chaos that sent the world scrambling for a rulebook. Because look, this wasn't just about pop music. This unregulated Wild West of AI was creating real, tangible problems. It was forcing courts and governments to wake up and confront a whole wave of new ethical dilemmas and, frankly, some outright harms. Take this case right here from the Netherlands. They had this automated system called Siri that used a secret algorithm to flag potential welfare fraud. The problem? It overwhelmingly targeted low-income and immigrant neighborhoods. So in 2020, a court shut it down, ruling it was unconstitutional because it was totally opaque and discriminatory, a clear violation of basic human rights. And then a few years later, in Germany, it was a similar story. The country's highest court banned predictive policing software. They argued that using automated data analysis to guess who might commit a crime was just a massive infringement on personal privacy. So these rulings sent a really clear message. AI's power wasn't some theoretical thing anymore. Its harms were here, and they were immediate.
Now, what's really interesting is that the push for regulation came from two totally different places. On one side, you have the doomers, the folks worried about those long-term existential threats, superintelligence spinning out of our control. But on the other side, you have the ethics camp, and they were focused on the very real harms we just saw, bias, inequality, stuff happening right now. And for a brief moment, both of these camps agreed on one thing. We needed rules.
And so the world started writing the Rulebook. The most ambitious effort by far came from the European Union. Their goal was to create the first ever comprehensive legal framework for AI, hoping to set a global standard that everyone else would follow. At the heart of the EU's plan is this risk-based pyramid. And honestly, it's a pretty elegant solution. Instead of some clumsy one-size-fits-all approach, it sorts AI systems based on their potential for harm. At the very top, you've got unacceptable risk. These are systems that are just straight up banned. As you move down the pyramid, the rules get lighter and lighter, all the way down to minimal risk systems like a spam filter, which don't really need any specific regulation. So what did the EU consider unacceptable? Well, we're talking about things like government-run social scoring systems that rank citizens, or the untargeted scraping of facial images from the internet to build massive databases. Most real-time biometric surveillance in public places got the axe too, and so did AI that's designed to manipulate you without you even knowing it. The point is, these were hard lines drawn in the sand to protect fundamental rights.
And these weren't just suggestions. Oh no, the EU backed its digital rules with some serious financial muscle. A whole wave of massive fines against big tech companies for violations really came to a head in 2025. The message was loud and clear. The era of just asking companies to behave was over.
But then, just as this new, regulated world was finally taking shape, the whole vibe shifted. The global conversation pivoted dramatically away from safety and rights and toward a new obsession, speed, competitiveness, and a deep fear of falling behind. Just look at this timeline. You can see how fast the dominoes fell in early 2025. It was stunning. In January, the US starts revoking its previous AI safety orders. By February, Canada completely repeals its landmark AI law. And by July, the US publishes an action plan literally titled Winning the Race. That global consensus on caution, it just shattered in a matter of months. And this slide just illustrates that new dynamic perfectly. On the right, you see the US going on this deregulatory blitz, issuing executive orders to fast-track infrastructure and get rid of what it was now calling harmful safety restrictions. And meanwhile, on the left, the EU, spooked by these big influential reports warning of an innovation gap with the US and China, it suddenly pivoted too. The conversation there went from protection to simplifying its own landmark regulations, all to boost competitiveness.
This quote just nails the shift in Europe's identity. Spurred on by those reports, the EU started to reframe its whole role, not as the world's regulator, but as the savior of its own innovation, absolutely terrified of being left in the dust. So, with that old consensus gone, the world began to reorganize. And what we're seeing now is the emergence of three distinct competing blocks. Three digital empires, you could call them, each with its own powerful and deeply held philosophy on how to govern technology. This table lays it all out so clearly. You've got the United States with a market-driven model that's all about innovation and empowering big tech. Then you have the European Union, championing a rights-driven model, prioritizing human dignity and privacy above all else. And finally, China, with a state-driven model centered on infrastructure, censorship, and social control. And this contrast is just fundamental. The EU's model is about a duty of care, the idea that platforms are responsible for the risks they create. The US model, on the other hand, is a liability shield. Laws like Section 230 grant platforms broad immunity to foster fearless innovation. It's a core clash, right? Responsibility versus freedom. And then, of course, there's the third empire. China isn't just playing by its own rules at home. It's actively exporting its state-driven model. By building its own standards and forging alliances, especially across the global south, it's creating an entirely separate governance bloc, totally independent of the West. Which brings us to this monumental crossroads. The great pivot from regulation to competition has left the world staring down two fundamentally different paths forward, two competing strategies for the very future of intelligence itself. This slide shows those two ultimate strategies perfectly. The US is on the path of frontier intelligence. It's a high-risk, high-reward bet on pushing technology to its absolute limit to try and achieve artificial general intelligence. China, though, is on the path of pervasive intelligence, not focusing on the ultimate AI, but on deploying cost-effective, good enough AI as widely and as quickly as possible. And that leads us to the final crucial question. What wins? Is it the race to make it better? To build the most powerful intelligence the world has ever seen? Or is it the race to use it better? To embed practical AI into every single corner of the economy and society? The world is placing its bets right now, and the outcome is going to define the 21st century.